Well, the conduct of Pfizer-BioNTech, the biggest pharmaceutical company involved in the COVID-19 vaccines production, is deplorable and unacceptable in a democratic framework as the European Union one. Yesterday, in the official European Parliament Special Committee for COVID Pandemic Management, the Pfizer CEO, Albert Bourla, refused to appear to answer our legitimate questions about his private text messages with the President of EU Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, that have already been considered to be irregular, according to the Transparency EU regulation, by the EU Ombudsman and the EU Court of Auditors. He has sent Mrs. Small in his place, who has not answered the most important questions that our special committee has addressed to her regarding the company's price policy, the release of clinical trials reports, adverse effects, and other issues concerning the safety and efficacy of Pfizer-BioNTech vaccines. The continuous non-fulfillment of the duties of transparency by Pfizer's executives clearly violates the EU citizens' rights to know in detail how and for which purpose the taxpayers' money is spent. We're discussing about billions of public money that has been managed by the EU Commission by secret agreements directly conducted with the company's CEO, away from democratic control of people by their elected representatives in the EU Parliament. The refusal by President von der Leyen to disclose the content of their text messages first, and the denial by Mr. Bourla to appear in front of the Parliament then, followed by the reticent behavior of Mrs. Small yesterday, casts concerning shadows on the legitimacy of the entire contract award process, leaving suspicion of corruption to emerge.
I will remind you of a huge scandal exactly 10 years ago when Pfizer was penalized for bribing Croatian doctors responsible for registration of medicines and for bribing doctors in Bioethics Commission in Croatia who were evaluating clinical trials. And in the end, Pfizer had to pay $60 million just for that. And of course, if we look at the company history, we will see a lot of lawsuits and a lot of fines being paid. For example, a few years before this case in Croatia, which was not limited just to Croatia, it was also in Bulgaria and some other countries. A few years before that, Pfizer had to pay $2.3 billion for false advertising. So when you have a company like that, using text messages to communicate with the head of the Commission, then a concerned citizen must ask himself or herself, what is happening here? Is this a conflict of interest? Of course it is. And the conflict of interest is the first step towards corruption. So basically, we were discussing this text messages scandal some time ago, and we called upon President of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, to resign. And I will repeat my demand for her to resign, because this cannot be accepted in a democratic society.
Now I'm asking you, what about the interests of our people? What about the interests of the Europeans whose money was spent, or wasted, I would say now, to buy these medical products that are not providing what they were marketed for? Because what we found out yesterday, when one of my colleagues asked if they tested, in this case Pfizer, if Pfizer tested, if their medical product is stopping the spread of the virus, we were shocked to find out yesterday that they haven't tested their vaccine to see if it's stopping the spread of the virus. So we are now more than a year after the green certificate, the digital green certificate was imposed in the European Union, and people were forced to be vaccinated with the medical product in order to exercise their basic fundamental rights. And they were told, and we were told, we were voted against the green certificate, but Many of our colleagues voted in favor of it because they believe what these companies have said, that if you get vaccinated, you will not be infected and you will not spread the virus. They even ran a campaign and said, get vaccinated in order to keep your grandmother and your parents healthy. And we find out now, after more than a year, that when they requested the special marketing authorization, they haven't tested the vaccine to see if it's stopping the spread of the virus. So I'm asking again, and we are asking again, what are they going to hide? What do they hide exactly? Why aren't they transparent with their medical product? We heard yesterday, I was shocked. Because Pfizer used this opportunity just to do a PR campaign and even lecture us, why are we asking this and not asking that? Who are they to question us? What kind of questions do we ask? We are elected by the people for the people, not they. And they are supposed to answer all these questions, which they have not.
First of all, I couldn't agree more with my colleagues on what has already been said here. It is a scandal that Mr. Bourla is shirking his duty to speak and answer questions after having made the deal of his life for Pfizer with unsuspicious citizens. Citizens who believed the often groundless promises of the so-called 95% effectiveness and the absolute safety of the vaccine. And not only did they pay billions of euros in taxpayers' money for it, quite a few of them also paid for these promises with the loss of their personal well-being. So it was more than obvious for me to ask for the approval data for the vaccination, especially since the mRNA vaccines have now received full market authorization in the EU, which is completely incomprehensible and unacceptable to me. This at a time when even the media mainstream can no longer conceal the sometimes life-threatening or even fatal side effects. The committee meeting yesterday and the so-called answers to my questions have been an impertinence that cannot be surpassed. Mrs. Small, representing Mr. Bourla, either pretended to be ignorant or was unwilling to address any of my questions. The EMA approval was made with reference to additional clinical trial data. Mrs. Small would not answer questions about what the data material was. A mandatory study on safety for pregnant women was quietly discontinued by Pfizer. Preliminary data from V-Safe, a program of the US authority CDC, seems to show a devastating rate of spontaneous abortions in pregnant women. Mrs. Small declined to comment.
So, yesterday's session of COVID committee showed yet again that EU Parliament is nothing but a gigantic show of democracy illusion to fool the peoples of Europe into thinking their interests were represented in Parliament. It is not, though. Not only do the invited panelists, such as representatives of pharmaceutical companies or ministers of health from the member states, not answer any of our questions. No, they continue to spread disinformation about the safety and efficacy of mRNA injections. They continue to lie about and downplay, outright deny the harmful effects of these injections. They continue to deny the people access to the contracts, and they continue to let Ursula von der Leyen get away with not disclosing the texts exchanged between her and Pfizer CEO, Mr. Bourla. In short, they continue to demonstrate their utter contempt for the peoples of EU. The chair of COVID committee, Ms. Kathleen van Bremt, Social Democrat in Belgium, does not run this committee to serve the people. She runs this committee to protect the interests of pharmaceutical companies, EU Commission, and governments of EU at the expense of the people. Yesterday, Mrs. van Bremt refused to put a point of order to a vote. This is a gross violation of the rules of procedure and demonstrates her disregard for democracy and the rights of the people. You might want to drop her a couple of lines to let her know that you will not tolerate your rights being violated by her or anyone else for that matter. I had raised this point of order to declare COVID committee incompetent to serve the best interest of the people and to expose their scheme for lack of authority to compel anyone to appear in front of committee and to answer any questions, thus opening a way to have a formal committee of inquiry set up. A formal committee of inquiry would give the people the means to get to the bottom of things and would put an end to their plot of stripping the people of freedom, democracy, and the rule of law. All of us here today, and many more, there is more MEPs by now, we will continue to fight for a committee of inquiry. But we need you to join us in this fight. We need your help to do it. So here's what you can do. Write to your MEPs, call their offices, and keep doing it. I mean, do it over and over and over again, literally clocking their phone lines. Get on their nerves. Demand a committee of inquiry. And keep doing it for as long as it takes. Do not stop until your demands are met. It is your right. Let them know that in a democracy, it is in fact you, the people, that are running the show. And if they fail to respect that, then let them know you will replace them. So please take charge, get involved. Don't let these anti-democrats get away with stripping you of your freedom, democracy, and the rule of law. Thank you.